Hey fam, welcome to another episode of Good, Bad, and Ugly about real estate. Have you ever asked yourself, how does anybody buy a house these days without using their own money? Have you ever wondered, like, all you see all these people on TV and like, how are they able to buy houses? I work a W-2 and I don't have the extra money to do it. I don't have a rich uncle. I don't have a rich aunt. You always say to yourself, I can't do this because I don't have the money to do it. Well, my next guest is going to share with you how they got into real estate and how they can help you get into your next deal. So help me welcome to the stage my friend Jake. Woohoo! What's going on, Jake?
What's up, Jose? Thank you for the warm welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on, man. It's been a while. I'm glad we were able to make this time to spend some time together and share you with the rest of the world, hopefully. So I usually start my podcast with asking my guests to share their story. So can you share with everybody how you got into the real estate game and what are you doing today?
Absolutely. And thanks again for having me on. In terms of my background, been out of school for about a decade. Um, so a young 30 years old here. My entrance into the real estate game was about 5 years ago in 2020. Um, things had gone relatively well, looking for kind of a way to diversify investments. And I was living in Boulder, bullish on Boulder County. Any of the audience that knows it's a beautiful place,
Yep.
well run municipality. Maybe their permits are slow for you builders, but uh, for the average person, I really love it. And so went up to Long Mountain and bought a house, and um, I was looking at fixing it, selling it. I had a couple of friends who had like really done well there, and so I looked into it. Didn't love the financing options, and that was kind of that. I worked in tech, worked with Snapchat, Shopify, a couple of these larger tech companies, and a few years ago, I was gunning for a new job down in the Denver Tech Center, working with a recruiter, company called WorldPay, back-end payment technology,
Yeah.
and went through a long, rigorous interview process. Didn't get the position. The recruiter had asked, hey, I'm working with this company. Have you ever thought about working in lending? The answer was no. Flew out, met the team at Casa Lending, my current company, and pretty soon realized that they were filling a niche that I had kind of ran into there in 2020. Looking at those different financing options, what would it look like if I wanted to buy a house, put some money into it, and sell it? What would that capital look like? What would the time frame look like? What would the process look like? I was fairly disenamored, and again, didn't do it. Um, Talking to the team at Casa, it seemed like they really solved for that, both on the fix and flip side, but also on the ground up side. Um, and so started with them a little over a year ago now, and kind of has changed my world over the last 12 to 18 months. Been able to dive in and kind of understand the ins and outs of real estate, through conversations with my investors, connectors, builders, and obviously the leadership at my company have been able to obtain increasing but fairly well-rounded understanding of what the real estate landscape looks like, how people are making money, and how these projects work. So now managing the fund here in Colorado, our company is called Casa Lending, Cleveland-based company, originating about $1.5 billion a year. Lending in 46 states, and we have a really bullish outlook on Colorado, and I think that's been exemplified in the projects that we've gotten into. So we're working with builders, with flippers, with developers all across Denver Metro, Summit County, Fraser Valley, looking at Steamboat 2 up in the Yampa Valley. Just great pockets of real estate that we feel really strong about. And as I have met more people and kind of pitched our product, which really is capital in general, right? Like we provide short-term construction financing. Just gotten more and more good feedback, and that's where we're at, Jose. So appreciate the opportunity to talk about Casa and answer any questions you might have or the audience may have, and looking forward to it.
Yeah. So unfortunately, this is recorded, right? So we can't get any live questions. But as an investor myself, coming up through the ranks, I always have certain questions that I asked. Um, so I'll ask you and try to anticipate other people's questions, right? So first thing I would be like, how would you qualify somebody to borrow money from you? Because when I first did my first like hard money loan, for example, I didn't know about liquid reserves. I wasn't sure like how much I had to put for down payment. How would I qualify? Can I have a partner to help me qualify? Those type of things. So can you kind of share people how can they get into this so-called game, real estate game, right? With maybe even little to no money, with some creative structuring of deals, or maybe with some people that they can partner with.
Great question, Jose. And I will say, for the audience that's going to listen to this, going to make sure that my personal information is in the description so you guys can reach out to me directly. More than happy to have conversations regardless of where you're at in your real estate journey. I work with people who have done, one flip, one small condo flip, and I work with builders who are building, 50 ground up subdivisions, and have done, thousands of outsells. So runs the gambit, and that's a great question. It's a question that I get with a lot of frequency. Very very prepped to answer this. And this answer, for a lot of the lending institutions, it really depends institution by institution. On one end of the spectrum, you have the banks, that are going to be quite stringent with what they need: tax returns, asset statements, etc. They're going to require more money down. And then you have kind of the some of the cowboy shops, some of the hard money shops that are going to give you, exactly what you want, without barely underwriting you. And on the bank side, the capital is going to be a bit cheaper. On that kind of cowboy side, it's going to be a lot more expensive. We're slotted right in the middle. And at Casa, really, what we're looking at when we, engage with a new investor, we're looking at three core components. We're looking at experience, we're looking at credit, and we're looking at liquidity. And those three things I kind of said in descending order of importance. So I'll start with the least important, but it is real, which is liquidity. And when you talk about getting into deals with not that much money, we enable a partnership structure. I know there's the sub two, the gator communities, all these kind of different ways to get in and out of real estate deals using other capital. But generally, for our investor, whether it's an individual or a group, we want to see that they're able to make the down payment on the property. So if we're going to come in and fund 90% of the purchase price and 100% of the construction on a project, we want to verify that 10% down that the investor is coming, that's there in a bank account. We'll ask you for a snapshot of your bank account. Again, don't need kind of the bigger asset liability statements. And then we'd like to see that you can, if you're borrowing for construction, make it to your first draw, right? We fund draws, construction draws, the reimbursement for completed work. And so we want to see that you can, make it to that first draw. So we'd like to see, 5 to 10% of that construction budget in cash. Nice. So that's part one, fairly easy: liquidity. Rising in order of importance, credit. Credit to, fairly pure play metric. I think, most people understand it. Basically, some people understand it a lot, but essentially that to us is like, has this individual demonstrated the ability to pay their bills, to use debt? Right? Credit card is the most commonly used form of debt, right? You put something on your credit card, $10, hit the statement, you pay it off, your credit goes up, great. We have a threshold of 660. We're not able to work with investors with less credit. What we are able to do, and sometimes we solve for this, is if there's partners on a deal, we'll take the highest credit score. So we're not going to be restrictive looking at aggregate credit across an investor group and kind of benchmarking that lowest or even the middle. We're happy to take the highest credit, because that to us indicates that there's someone on our loan that is going to and kind of has demonstrable history of paying back money, right? Which is what we're in the business of.
Right.
And then the last and most important is experience. And to us, it's straightforward. Has this individual demonstrated the ability to complete the project, the type of project for which they're requesting capital for? If you want money for a fix and flip, we want to see that you've done a fix and flip. Same with ground up. Our rates, our terms, and you'll find this across the space, will become softer, more desirable with more experience. because that, in our opinion, de-risks someone who's done 100 projects. The likelihood of them completing their 101st is far greater than the likelihood of someone who's done one completing their second. So
Right.
through that kind of liquidity, credit, and experience in ascending order, the way I just said it, is what we look at to underwrite a deal.
Awesome. You know, one thing that I learned as I was applying for loans and credit like this was the word seasoning. So can you kind of explain to people what seasoning means, and is that a requirement for getting a loan product through you guys?
It's a great question, and I've heard a couple different definitions for seasoning. I'll tell you how we look at it. And the short answer is no. If in my definition of seasoned, it's how long you've owned the property, whether that be a house or a piece of dirt. And so here's where it matters. Where it doesn't matter is us doing the deal. If you own a property, I don't care if you've owned it for 1 day or 10 years. If the deal is good, we're going to do the deal. Now, where seasoning comes into play is just funded a deal in Wash Park, just closed today. For this deal, the individuals had owned the dirt for 6 months. And they asked, hey, Jake, we bought this land 6 months ago for $500,000. We think now it's worth $600,000. Are you able to use kind of the new value of the dirt because it's been seasoned 6 months, meaning it's been owned for 6 months?
Right.
Within Casa Lending's world, unfortunately, no. We require 9 months of seasoning in order to take that current appraised value. So that's what seasoning means to me, which is how long have you owned the property? And for us, if you've owned the property that you're planning on building on or flipping, we can take the current value, not the price you purchased for it, once you've owned it for 9 months. So we have a 9-month seasoning period before we can
try to refire,
blend off of a value different from the original purchase price.
Gotcha. So my reference to seasoning was with the liquidity, right? So you said you needed 10% down for the deal. Let's say it's for easy numbers, it's a 100K deal. So I would have to come to the table with 10K. Well, if I have a private money lender that gives me 10K and it goes to my account and I give you that snapshot, is a snapshot good enough, or does it have to sit there for a week? Does it have to be there for 6 months? That's where I got, like, I don't say caught up, but some lenders really want to see that money, like, quote unquote, belong to you and been sitting there for more than just 2 hours before you close the deal with them. So that's where I was referencing whether you guys have that kind of requirement.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna tread lightly here. Goes out to the masses. One thing at Casa that we really pride ourselves on is flexibility.
Sure.
We want to get deals done. We want investors to get deals done. If I'm looking at a big project and I'm looking to lend millions of dollars, and the client needs to come, the investor needs to come with like 500 grand to the deal, right? Like a big ground up, $4 or $5 million house. And I see that they have $0 in January and they have $1 million in February. And there's not like a clean story of like, hey, like, yeah, I just sold this house, obviously. My team's probably going to scrutinize it. Smaller deals, probably a little less so. We have no problem working with investors who come in second lien position. And I would anticipate that kind of cash coming into account to enable a deal to go through is likely going to come from a separate party and probably an interested party. In some cases, it could come from, mom or, grandpa or something. In other cases, it's probably coming from someone who's going to be in second lien position on the property. If there is a formal second lien position on the property and the funds are going to come at the time of close, we'll sign an intercreditor agreement, we'll be good. If it comes in earlier, we may or may not ask a question. And so perhaps this isn't the best answer.
No, that's good.
We try to be common sense and we try to be flexible.
Sure.
If you're getting into a fix and flip deal and you need 80K to close it, and your account shows 50, and then the next month it shows 80, my underwriting team probably isn't going to scrutinize and ask you where that 30,000 came from.
Sure.
But if you have 0 and the next month it's 500, we're probably going to need a story just to kind of iron out. And again, second lien position, seconds on a loan, absolutely fine. Casa Lending and myself, we only lend in first position, but we respectfully welcome seconds, as long as in a formal sense they sign an intercreditor agreement. So let me know if you think I answered that aptly.
No, you answered it perfectly. So I just want you to help me educate the audience, because again, I don't know the experience levels of people watching, right? So can you explain to people because you and I understand the term second position, right? But some people may not. So can you help me share with the audience when we say second position, what that means? And then just for clarity, you said the document that needed to be signed between you and the PM or the second position holder, basically what that instrument does for you and how that protects you as the primary lender.
Yeah. Jose, we're in this age of AI, and my initial urge was to go to ChatGPT and type in second position so I could regurgitate what it says.
Sure.
Organic, hands are free here. I'm going to do my best to explain this. So when we talk about lending, that first position that I said, Casa and I only lend in first position. Essentially what that means is we are the first to get paid back, right? We're lending on a property where, that's being built or fixed and remodeled, right? So when that house is sold, we need to get paid back our principal.
Yeah.
Hopefully, there's more money left. And that's where the investor makes money, right? You borrow this to make that. And that is what you're going to make. Sometimes investors are strapped for cash for one reason or another, but they have the acumen, they have the resources to build a good deal with a spread and make profit. If I'm about to, and I'll use real numbers, and then we can kind of look at exactly what first and second position would be. So let's use, one of these beautiful Denver neighborhoods that Casa and I do a lot of work in, Wash Park. A builder buys a piece of dirt for wants to buy a piece of dirt and build a house. The dirt's $500,000. The build is $1 million. Total project costs are $1.5 million.
Right.
Us at Casa, we're going to come in and give, let's say, 60% of the dirt and 100% of the construction. So we're going to go ahead and do a loan amount of $1,300,000, which means the builder's cash to close will be $200,000. That's the cash that the builder needs to come down, that down payment that I'm talking about, in order for us to be comfortable lending the $1.3 million on the deal. And with that, hopefully we like to see 25% spread. Hopefully that builder's selling that house for $1,500,000 and has $500K of spread.
Right.
But maybe that builder just bought 4 projects and they have a great team with, great GCs and project managers and subs that can do the work, but they don't have the cash. Sometimes Uncle John or a more formal, private money lender who lends in second lien position.
Right.
They'll call that person for that 200,000. Now, in that case, the person lending the 200,000 to get into the deal, they're in second lien position, meaning when the builder goes ahead and sells that house, out of that sale price, the first $1.3 million is going back to Casa Lending. We are first. We will be the first to be paid back. Second is second. Again, in this scenario, right, hopefully the builder has a good spread and the market's nice and hot, and they go ahead and they build that house and they sell it for $2 million. And they pay back Jake and Casa Lending the 1.3, and they pay back Uncle Frank or whoever is in second position the 200,000. Maybe they pay a bit of interest, call it $100,000. They still made $400,000 on that project, and they put it in their pocket. Wanted to build out this scenario to demonstrate why it makes sense for some people to use, a second lien position lender or what we call sometimes as gap funding.
Right.
So that's kind of what first and second position mean. The intercreditor agreement is a piece of paper when we go to close this deal and provide the funding that Uncle Frank or whoever that second lien position is signs a document saying, I acknowledge that Casa Lending will be paid back first on this project. And if anything is to happen, I will play nice. Second lien position is not able to put a second lien, right? A lien on the property.
Right.
And that's a whole other can of worms. But essentially what our intercreditor agreement does is it's a piece of paper that is essentially a handshake between us and a second lender on the property, stating that we will get paid back first.
Awesome. Clear as day. Great explanation. I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Oh man, lost my train of thought on this one. Give me a sec here. So like I said, I'm not sure what the level of expertise are of people, but question for somebody who may be a little bit more experienced in structuring deals, right? Whether it be a hard money loan or not, or maybe they're doing a let's see, let me think of a creative way. What if somebody had a seller that is willing to carry some of the debt? Is that something that you guys do, or is that more of a like a DSCR type program and that's debt service cover ratio program for those that are watching? That's not something that's in your lane.
It's a great question. And I will, take the moment to promote our DSCR program at Casa, managed by my colleagues, Michael Flynn and Jason Klein. They've been in the space a lot longer than me. They know numbers like the back of their hand. They look at these deals all day, and they're awesome. While I don't specifically manage that product, we've rolled that out in the last year. They're doing more and more. I wish that they were there here right next to me to answer that question, whether or not we can provide seller financing. The short answer for our fix and flip and ground up product is no. For DSCR, that's a great one. Let's get back and put it in the notes to the audience, just like you also know, can Casa Lending use seller financing in their DSCR product?
We'll have Jake put a comment on the video for you all to watch, so make sure you're looking at the comments. And let me do a selfish plug here. Make sure you like and subscribe so you know when he makes a comment on this video, so that way you guys know to come back and get the answers to the question. So, the name of the channel is Good, Bad, and Ugly about real estate. And although you're a lender, I mean, you got to see the good side and the bad side of a lot of these deals. So can you share with us like a good story that you had and a bad story that you had in your experience in real estate, and doesn't have to go in any specific order, whichever one you choose?
Great question. And I think, I'm pleased to say that the good has drastically outweighed the bad.
Sure.
And what I'm trying to think of is, do I want to speak to, my personal investing experience or within Casa's ecosystem? And I think
can do your personal. I mean, most people here are investors or want to be, right? So anything you can share that they can learn from, it would be great.
Yeah. Okay. The good, and I think the underlying lesson here is going to be time in the market is often better than timing the market.
Yeah.
Bought a house in Longmont in 2022. Relative market peak. Competitive market, waived concessions, came in overbid and got the house. And pleased with the house, but man, the market corrected a bit, and I was there like, what am I doing here? Like, I just paid, a lot for this house, and now it's worth less. Like, I wanted this to be a good investment.
Right.
And it took a bit, but the market appreciated, and now the house is worth about 20% more than I bought it, and it's only been 3 years. So I think like there's a bit of good and bad there, but the good is like, to buyers out there, right? Capital is a bit expensive, 6-7%. Housing prices are expensive, and they've gone down a bit, but they're still expensive. And so to the buyers out there, a lot of them are, probably thinking to themselves like, man, this is expensive. Like, it's probably cheaper to rent. You buy a house, you commit to the payment, don't buy something you can't chew. The real estate market goes up. And I think it's a simple supply and demand. There are more and more people in this country. There are less and less available houses. We've seen some of the big builders correct their outlook in terms of how many new homes they're going to build. That's only going to exacerbate the problem. And yes, that will likely lead to houses to increase in price. I guess all to say the good is, the experience that I had purchasing my home and holding it, and it's 3 years. Again, like still relatively young, but grateful that I kind of took the leap to make that decision to purchase the property. I didn't buy too much, but I reached for it, and so that's probably my good, and kind of an ongoing good makes up a large portion of kind of what I have to my name. And I'm grateful, bullish on Boulder County, bullish on Longmont, and so that's the good, is kind of the appreciation that you can get, and the fact that you can borrow money to appreciate, right? Like I only put in 20% of that, but when the asset increases by 20%, that's the whole thing going up, and that's a big number. The bad, I think, I want to speak to, especially if there's investors here and investors I work with, what can happen when you're too aggressive. And Jose, you're in the flip space. I'm sure you hear it. Market here in Denver is corrected a bit. In some places, 4, 5, 6, 7%. And when you're too aggressive and you don't find deals with good enough spreads, you can lose money. And so I think my bad is there's a couple conversations I've had with people I really like, great investors, great people, who have spread themselves thin, used that kind of second position, have borrowed as much as they can, gap funding or second position funding to get into a deal, and then hard money from myself or other lenders, and they've purchased 5, 6, 7, 8 properties without a big enough spread. And when I say spread, the amount that they're hoping to make between the purchase price, the rehab budget, the interest costs, right? That's your cost basis. And then the value of their house, what we call ARV, or after repair value. That spread is huge. And when a market corrects, right, and a house can go down. And so I think the bad that I've experienced is having someone, unfortunate conversation with some great people, who have gone a little too aggressive, levered themselves up too much, are paying, 5 figures a month per property on holding costs because they have, 500, 600, 700K out at 10, 11, 12, 13%.
Right.
And that can get dangerous. Which I think, good opportunity to plug Casa is that we really look at this stuff. If one of my investors brings me a deal and they're buying it for 500K, they're putting 50K into it, and they're selling it for 600 grand, that $50,000 spread, someone might be like, oh wow, they're gonna make $50,000 on that house. There's carrying costs, and if the market corrects, 5%, there goes your profit. And then if you have to, more inventory in the same type and more days on market, you have to carry that for an extra 2 months, and you have $500,000 out at 10%, right? That's 50 grand a year. That's 6 grand a month.
Well, let's just say it's a perfect world, and you get to sell it the day that you put it on the market. You sell it day one. You still got closing costs, agent fees, right? Because there's marketing involved, so they're going to want to get paid for selling the house for you, because most people don't sell it themselves. Most investors don't sell it themselves. So even still, I mean, then if you subtract that, you said 500 with 50, that 50 rehab, but like I said, you start adding agent fees and closing costs alone, what eats that 50 up, and that's 20, 25 right there. And then you start, like you said, holding costs, utility costs, and if you had to borrow for a second position loan, the cost to pay that person back plus their fees, that 50 gets eaten up very, very quickly.
Wise words. And you can tell, Jose is talking like an experienced investor, being able to understand all these costs. And I think that's, super top of mind for the new investors out there, is really understand the holistic costs associated with going into real estate investing.
So, you bring up a good point about Casa. So you can try to take care of the people that are trying to borrow from you. So am I right to believe that if, let's say I'm a borrower coming to you, oh, I got this great deal. I need to borrow, like you said, 500K. I think this thing is going to be worth 6.25 when I'm done. that Casa would do a quote unquote underwriting and say that, we won't lend because it's too thin of a margin for us. We don't think this is a great deal that we'd want to lend on, kind of protecting the investor from themselves. Is that something that you guys would do?
Absolutely. And can't speak highly enough about our underwriting team. When an investor brings a deal, we'll ask, we'll talk about a fix and flip, right? They're going to purchase it at this, put this much in it. How much do you think you're going to get? Perfect. And then I'll ask again, like, what is an appraiser? Like, what do you think an appraiser will think?
Right.
Sometimes I get a different answer. But the answer is yes, we judiciously underwrite the deals. I wouldn't say that we're stingy or super conservative, but we're real. We look at the comps in the area, we look at the market, and if the value that our team comes to is drastically different than the after repair value anticipated by the investor, we'll go ahead and have that conversation. Sometimes that results in us, doing less of a loan. Sometimes it results in us saying, hey, like, this deal just doesn't look good, man. We don't want you to lose money, so we're not comfortable doing the deal. But yeah, we underwrite our deals. We have underwriters that are quite familiar with the Denver market, and so we do our best to recognize if there are certain pockets, right? Like not all comps are apples to apples, and it's a science, and it's also understanding what's going on. So we do our best to continue to educate ourselves on the reality of the market. But yes, absolutely, we underwrite all deals. And if the deal doesn't pencil and it doesn't look good, we're going to tell the investor. If it's real bad, we're just not going to lend on it. And if it's not great, we're going to let the investor know to make sure that they're have their head on and are comfortable proceeding with all the knowledge in their head.
All right, that's good to know. So I got one final question for you. So, in my experience working with, and like you said, I have done some fix and flips in my past. You're usually on a draw system when you're getting the money for the rehab or construction, however you want to refer to it as. From Casa's point of view, let's just say a borrower puts in for a draw request, which is basically asking to take money. This is for the audience, taking money from the kitty or the pot, right, to pay the contractor. Upon the request of that draw, does Casa send an inspector out? That's like A part of the question. And then the B question is, let's say this draw is supposed to be new cabinets, new countertops, and maybe new flooring in the kitchen, right? And then the inspector goes out there and all they see is new cabinets. Would that inspector pass or approve a new draw, or to say we gave you money for XYZ, you won't get another draw until this is done? Because that's a kind of for me, that's a protective issue that I've had issues in the past.
Yeah, it's a great question. Part of what differentiates Casa from other lenders, part of the reason why I work with them, and part of the reason why we continue to take market share both in Denver and across the country is because of our aptitude with draws. We try to be common sense. We recognize that enabling a builder to draw on a time frame they want, on a schedule they want, in an amount that they want, will enable them to move forward their project at their desired quick rate. And so we recognize that if we're relatively flexible with our draws, that enables builders to move their projects forward through, so complete the project, pay us back, and do another project so everyone wins.
Right.
We've put a lot of time and human capital into our draw process, into the back-end infrastructure, the user interface and experience. With Casa, when you close a loan with us, our servicing team will reach out that day. Big shout out to my colleagues, Ben, Andrew, Maria, the entire servicing team. They're awesome. For the month of July, our draw turn time was 1.2 days, meaning from the time of draw request to the time of those funds hitting the bank account was around 28 hours on average. You asked the question, how does that work? Do you need an inspector to come out? The answer is, it's up to you. Option one, go into the back end of our infrastructure. Before the deal's done, we'll have a general scope of work and budget. So there will be general line items. And you can go in and say, hey, finish the kitchen, finish the bathroom. Kitchen was 40, bathroom is 20, 60 grand. Then comes the option. Do you want to use our associated app called Proxy Picks, based out of Chicago, geo-located app that enables you to go in, take pictures, and show us yourself that the work is done? Absolutely. It's going to be about $100. We'll get you those funds generally that day. Secondarily, some of these flippers, 5, 6 houses at the same time, they don't have time to take pictures, and they don't want to ask their subs to take pictures. You go ahead, same process, request an inspector to come out. If you request it in the morning, we'll get someone out there this evening. If you request it in the evening, we'll get somewhere out there the next morning. They'll go, they'll check the work. Now, Jose, if you're doing a project and you tell me, Jake, the kitchen and bathroom is done, and I walk in and like the floor is half done, there are no appliances to be seen, there's not a window in the window, and I go in the bathroom and the tile's 3/4 of the way done, but there's no toilet or sink, it's the inspector's job to check that. Probably going to go back to us and be like, hey, like this is the reality. So we'll probably have a conversation there.
Sure.
But if we walk in and it's just about done, things look about where you say, we're all good. We'll get you funded. Again, day and a half, 2 days at the absolute max. We're turning around draws, and that's where we focus. We understand that if you need money to keep your project forward, to pay your subs every Friday, to pay for the appliances that you just got, that if we get that money, you're going to move your project forward and everyone's going to do more business.
That's awesome. I thought of one more question. Always another question, right? So, as an investor, time's money, right? And sometimes one of the ploys that we can do when we're making offers to sellers is how quickly we can close, because a lot of people want their money so they can go move on to the next chapter in their life, or they're moving out of the country and they want money to travel with. So if I'm trying to use Casa to help me get into deals, what would be considered an average close time, or what is the fastest turnaround that you guys have done to help investors get into deals?
It's a great question, Jose, and a question that I get all the time. And there was a few different questions in there, but what I'll do is give you some insight into our typical process in Casa, and then emphasize kind of that same flexibility that I talked about with our draw process, with second lien position. That kind of continues with closing. Generally, the process is an investor brings me a deal. We look at the numbers. We come to an agreement on general loan amount, rates, term sheets signed. That engages our awesome closing team to go in, aggregate the documents that we need, LLC docs, budget, scope of work, title contact, insurance contact, a couple months bank statements, as I said, just to kind of make sure that liquidity is all good. In an ideal world, I would like to have the property appraised. We attract capital from awesome sources. In order for us to attract the cheap capital that enables us to pass to our investors, to enable us to be more competitive than I would say any other hard money lender in the space that I've run into. And who knows, maybe I'll run into someone who has better capital. I haven't. That's why I work for Casa. We like an appraisal. Generally, we have a great network. We don't need an AMC. We can get that turned around in 4 or 5 days. So what I say is, in general, we can close as fast as title and appraisal, which is about 5, 6 days. Would I like to have 2 weeks so I don't have to stress my team, my appraisal coordinator,
Sure.
Title coordinator? Yeah, so I would like 2 weeks. And so I'd say, like, in terms of average time, especially when we work with kind of these bigger builders and we have more time, average time for a close probably is 2 weeks. But we've closed in 2 days. We've closed in 3 days. And so what I'll tell my investors is, we're not going to lose your deal because of the time frame. If you come to me and you give me the deal, and I tell you that we're going to close it, we will close every time. However, if it's our first deal together and you bring me a deal with a 2-day closing time frame, I'm probably going to respectfully decline to do the deal because I don't want to stress my team and I don't want to underpromise or overpromise and underdeliver, right? I want to underpromise and overdeliver. So what that means generally is first deal, give me a week. Once we've been doing business a ton, we're doing a lot. If you need to close a deal in 3 or 4 days, we can do that. We can accommodate a retroactive appraisal. So maybe not the most straightforward answer there, Jose, but what else?
That is perfect.
Yeah.
You shared your flexibility, like you said, 2 or 3 days. 2 weeks is great. That's pretty standard with hard money lenders, and and it's also a lot shorter than your typical 45 days with a conventional lender. So it just shows that you guys understand how the game works and the industry goes. So as investors, it's nice to do an offer. I can close in 21 days and then end up closing in 14, right? Because now the seller is all happy because we're closing faster than we thought. So it's the answer I was looking for, I guess, is the best way of putting it. So, So for the audience, the reason why I brought Jake on here, as you heard, he has great products. He's very competitive as far as rates are concerned. The people that I know that I have sent him to have been surprised on what they can offer him. So kind of a plug for him. If you're in the flipping business or looking for some money, whether it be DSCR or hard money loans, reach out to my boy Jake. And Jake, can you tell him how to get a hold of you if they want to try to do some business with you?
100%. I'll have my email in the description, LinkedIn, so you can check out the work we're doing at Casa. We're all about education. I'll have 4, 5, 6 conversations about deals that I will never do for every one that I do. If you're a new investor, I'm more than happy to take the time with you, provide you with insight on how you can be successful, kind of what you might need to do to be able to work with a company like us. But holistically, open line, feel free to shoot me an email. Check out Casa on social. You'll see us increasing our market share here in Denver, continuing to be in more projects, continuing to have our signs up in yards and be at events. So we're really bullish on Denver. So to the investors in Denver, looking forward to connecting with you, and always an open line.
And just to kind of reiterate, his company is in 46 states. So if you're not in Denver or Colorado, doesn't mean you can't take advantage of what Casa offers. You just might not have the privilege of working with Jake. So just want to make sure people know that. Jake, thank you so much for giving us this time, educating us on how your process works, and kind of educating people on who may be afraid to get into the real estate game because they don't know how to access money. I think you've given them plenty of to chew on, so now they can maybe make better decisions, or at least have a better idea of how they can start working on their dream of getting real estate and making some money. So thank you, sir, for your time. And for the audience, thank you for coming back for another episode, and we'll see you in the next one.
Like and subscribe, guys. Jose is the real deal.
There you go.
Thanks for the time.
Take care.